Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of Just a Few. My name is Patrick Antwine, and I take this opportunity to not only welcome you, but to thank you for your support of this ministry. This platform allows me the opportunity to provide biblical responses to questions, from people just like you. And if you have a question and you'd like me to attempt an answer, please feel free to submit your question via email preferably. The email address is on your screen, and I'll try to provide you with a response if I can as soon as possible. Today's question is a bit of a follow-up one because I responded to a part of the question or an initial question about the issue of gambling and Christians. Should Christians get involved in legal gambling? But this was a bit of a follow-up question, I guess a bit of a tongue-in-cheek question that you'll see what the questioner is asking as a follow-up. The question is, should churches receive money from gambling? Meaning somebody won money through gambling and want to give some of the money to a church. I'm not going to find anything specifically in the Bible that addresses a specific issue like that, because it just didn't come up in the Bible. But it doesn't mean that I can't give, let's say, an opinion. Let me start by saying I remember this question was raised to a group of pastors at a pastors and leaders conference I attended way back in 1999 locally. And there were some breakout sessions, and I was at one of those breakout sessions around a table. I think there were 5 pastors at the table, and this issue of leadership and finances came up. And whether it was a question required as part of the breakout discussion or someone at the table raised it, I can't recall. Be that as it may, the question was asked of this group of pastors, and they were giving their opinions. One pastor said, no way, he's not going to take that money if it's from a source like that. And I don't think it was just gambling. It was just illegal activities that the pastor would be aware of, and funds came in from the person involved knowingly in those activities. Would the pastor take it? And the first couple of pastors said no. But then there was one pastor who, of course, I will leave, who will remain unnamed. In fact, he passed on some years ago, and he had a significant local church facility and church ministry here before he passed on. And to the surprise of the others at the table, he said he'll take the money and sanctify it and use it for the ministry. That's the expression he used. He said he was going to use it for the glory of God. And one particular pastor who is, he's still alive. I remember our eyes made fall. We looked at each other, and he was like, what? And then he turned and he looked at that pastor with shock. So it tells us that there are differences of opinions among pastors about should churches take that type of money. So don't be surprised if you're going to get divided responses even today, meaning in our time now. So I want to say that to receive such funds with the pastor or pastoral staff being unaware, it's just this money that came into the offering and kept coming at different times. Somebody's putting offering and they realize there's significant amounts, but they don't know who it is. And if you're unaware of the donor, then the question of funds from gambling doesn't arise, because the church doesn't know. The leaders just didn't know. But let me look at a couple scenarios, since the Bible doesn't speak directly to the scenario. So if money is being added to the church's regular offerings and collections, as I said a while ago, without anyone having the knowledge of who donated it or its source, the issue of gambling or funds from gambling, in that case, it doesn't arise. The church just isn't aware. Another scenario, if the donor is deeply involved in all forms of gambling, meaning legal and all types of illegal gambling syndicates and so on, really illegal activities, and is known to the pastor or the leaders in the church, and that person actually wants to involve the church in some way in redirecting, concealing, channeling or disposing of some of those ill-gotten gains. Again, it is known to the leadership of the church, whether to the pastor alone or others in leadership. The response, I think, should be no way. The church should not take that money because you're aware of who it's coming from and what the person is involved in. So that money should be declined and the person told why the church can't. Unless, of course, it's a pastor like the one I told you about earlier who sees nothing is wrong with it. The money could be, quote unquote, sanctified. Another case is if it's, let's say, a member of the congregation who, let's use the term, innocently wasn't aware that how the church views gambling, went and played some sort of lottery, or in the community there might have been some raffle or bingo or something, and just got involved and played for fun, and won a large sum of money and decided, I'm going to give an offering to my church. I'm going to go to the pastor personally and tell him what happened. I got this money from playing lotto or playing some other game, and I want to give a tithe or some portion of it to the church. So the pastor and they are now aware it's a church member and they want to give the money, and the church has to decide if they're going to take the money. Again, I would say that money should be declined, but in this case for different reasons. To take that money may serve as an endorsement to that vice of gambling when others become aware that brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so won some money through gambling and the church took the money, the pastor took the money. So others may be encouraged to do likewise because they might think nothing is wrong with this. And because of that, the church and the pastor and the leadership may be guilty of leading others into this vice that could become very addictive and a form of bondage because of their actions in taking the money. Whereas if they're taking the stand that no, we are not taking that money because we are not supporting that lifestyle, then the message would be clearly sent to everybody else. We do not endorse that. And when a pastor or leaders do such a thing, like let's assume they take such money, they might be having a bit of a ripple or domino effect in their church. Not only would others be emboldened and might get themselves in bondage and can't get out of gambling later on, is that you open yourself to all types of spiritual influence because there's a spiritual side to gambling that leads to the addictive and self-destructive nature of it, and that you could open your ministry up to the influence of those spirits behind it because you are welcoming of that type of activity by taking the money under the grounds of supposedly, well, using it for the glory of God. Does God really need that money? Is the kingdom of God in financial problems that we need to take money from such a source? So those are things you need to ask. Even if the pastor may say, well, I'll just talk to the person privately and said, we'll take the money and don't let anybody else know. The word is going to get around. Eventually it's going to get out there that the church got money from this person who was gambling, who played some game and got it. And Jesus warns about leading others to stumble by your actions. And that's what could happen. You could lead other people in the church to think the church has no problem with this lifestyle. And in terms of a couple of scriptures to that end, Jesus in Matthew 18 and then Paul in 1 Corinthians, let me just point out those couple of passages. Matthew 18:6, Jesus says, but whoever causes one of these little ones, and he's not talking about just biological children, but people who have come into the kingdom, whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he would drown in the depths of the sea. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 8:9-13, but beware lest somehow this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to those who are weak, meaning weak in the faith. Paul is dealing with the issue of should Christians who feel they have the liberty to eat whatever they may feel to do, eat meats purchased from temples and so on, where they were first offered to idols. So that's what he's dealing with here. It's not the same issue, but I think it's the same principle, guidelines here. Verse 10, for if anyone sees you who have knowledge eating in an idol's temple, parallel that with a pastor who think, hey, we could sanctify the money, this is no big thing. Money is neither good nor evil. All right, you may have that knowledge of freedom. Will not the conscience of him who is weak be emboldened to eat those things offered to idol or to engage in that type of lifestyle. And because of your knowledge shall the weak brother perish for whom Christ died. But when you thus sin against the brethren and wound their weak conscience, you sin against Christ. Therefore, Paul says concerning that food scenario, if food makes my brother stumble, I will never again eat meat, lest I make my brother stumble. So you need to be careful that you don't have a type of domino effect with other people in the church following the pattern. So that remember that spiritual element. A ministry which compromises with ill-gotten gain may create a haven for unclean spirits to run amok among the members of that church. Next thing you know, you have a church where 3/4 of the people in bondage to gambling. I'll close with some people ask, what about Zacchaeus? Look at how much money he stole from people and so on. He got it illegitimately, and then he came and he was willing to give it. The church could take it and give it to the poor and so on, like Zacchaeus said he'll give it back. Listen, Zacchaeus was saved. Jesus said salvation has come to this house, and Zacchaeus was just responding to the biblical mandate under the old covenant that if you have robbed somebody, restorative justice says you give back to them and even more than you took from them. And that is what Zacchaeus was doing. So please don't bring Zacchaeus into this scenario. It's a different thing altogether. So that's my response. I've taken much more time than I thought I would. It depends on the circumstances, and to a lesser degree, it depends on the perspective of the pastor. If they feel liberal enough to think, bring the money and I'll pray for it and use it for the glory of. Some pastors have that perspective. Others are very hardline and say, nope, I'm not interested in that type of money. Once I'm aware, I'm going to cut off that supply of money and say, no, thank you. So there you go. That's my response. Thank you for the question. My name is Patrick Antoine. Until the next episode.